We're always hearing about, how Apple is better than Android and blah blah blah. This whole fight keeps on happening, and we don't really know what side is the right side because everybody from one particular side thinks that the other side is wrong and the side they're on is right. But everyone I've ever talked to about iPhones seems to say the same thing. Apple devices are just built different and they're not really wrong. But are they really that much better than your Android phone? It just makes you wonder. Android, as we know it, is a bit of a wild child. It's an open source operating system, which means manufacturers can take the base Android system and the code and modify it to their heart's content. And it means that Android can be on 1,000 different devices, each with its own features, their own interfaces, and as a result, their own little quirks. We call this fragmentation. The issue, however, is that Android has to work on all of these devices. And since the devices are extremely different in the hardware that they are made of, every little difference counts. Your phone has an AMOLED display instead of an LCD display. It needs to be optimized in base Android. Your phone has a Samsung sensor instead of a Sony camera sensor. That needs to be optimized for Android. Your tablet has a large screen. The apps need to be optimized for that. It's not even just that there's so many different Android companies out there. Every company has multiple phone lines. Take Xiaomi as an example. They have their high-end MI series, their budget Redmi series and Poco series, and their overpowered gaming-focused Black Shark phones. Each of these have their own subcategories, and every year they release multiple of these. And that's just Xiaomi. Samsung has a line for each price range as well. F for the low end, because press F to pay respects. M for upper low. A for mid-tier and S for the high-end. And they even have Z for the folding and the flippy phones. And they pump out a phone for each of these categories every single year. With so many variations, you start to see why it's hard to optimize Android for every single device out there. This leads to some companies not giving the required number of software updates to their lower end devices. This particular argument also applies to Windows versus Mac debates because it's the same thing throughout. There's a bit of a difference because Windows isn't open source, so there's a considerable amount of vertical integration that exists from Microsoft side. But on the whole, if you buy a laptop from a different company, that particular company has to install drivers to make sure that the Windows operating system works properly on their device. And here's where the open source advantage of Android comes in. Since its source code is available to anyone, enthusiasts will create custom versions of Android for their devices. These are called custom ROMs. And if a device is popular enough, they'll release it to the public. You can learn all about custom ROMs in my video about custom ROMs. Apple, on the other hand, has a fully integrated approach. They design the hardware, they design the software. This means that they can design both of them to work together seamlessly. They don't have to worry about 1,000 different hardware variations. As a result, they can focus on getting things just right for their specific set of devices. Sure, they too pump out multiple products, but the price bracket is only comparable to the Galaxy S series or the MI series smartphones, thereby completely cutting out the less financially liquid. Or, if you've already, sold your kidneys, in which case they don't really want you again. An issue that tends to arise with this approach of Apple's whole ecosystem thing is how they deliver system updates. So Apple's iOS follows a centralized update model, as the company controls both the hardware and the software. This means that the updates are distributed simultaneously to all of the compatible devices, regardless of the model or the carrier. For instance, if an update is released for iOS, it would be immediately available for an iPhone SE, iPhone 11 or iPhone 13, provided they all support the latest version. On the other hand, Android uses an open source model, allowing manufacturers and carriers to tailor the operating system to their device. This results in fragmented update rollouts, meaning that different devices may get the same update at different times. For example, a Samsung device might receive a particular Android update sooner than a Motorola device. Moreover, due to the customizations, Android updates often have to be adapted by the manufacturers to their specific devices, further delaying the rollout process. Similarly, Apple's iOS has a different approach for system applications. So system apps on iOS like Safari browser, Mail, Photos, etc. are generally updated through major iOS updates distributed by Apple. This means that if Apple makes a significant change to an app like Safari, users generally won't see those changes until they install the next iOS update. This approach ensures system stability and uniformity among devices, but it also means that users may need to wait longer for particular app-specific updates and enhancements. Android system apps, on the other hand, are apps that are integral to the functioning of the device and are pre-installed and can be updated individually through the Google Play Store, independently of major OS updates. This is all part of Google's plan through the Project Mainline and Project Treble, where Google is actually shifting most of the important things relevant to the operating system through the Play Store, because every Android operating system version has the Google Play Store and every device has the Google Play Store. This also means that Google can deliver updates to their own apps such as Google Maps, Gmail, and Google Play services, and some core system components without waiting for a full system update. They don't have to wait for Samsung or Motorola or Xiaomi to roll out the next MIUI 15,000 or One UI 69 update. It will just be updated through the Play Store. This allows for more frequent updates and fixes to individual components, resulting in quicker response times to potential bugs or security vulnerabilities. This is another thing that also applies to Windows versus Mac, but the thing is, it's not as modular as Android, so that's a bit up to Microsoft. It's a bit of an issue, but Mac is still the same in terms of updates, so you still have to wait an entire update cycle for you to get the new versions or the new updates. So yeah. Now, the Android experience is not a flat line. Not all Android devices are made equally. You might have noticed that I said that Apple devices seem better. There's a reason for that. An Android experience improves massively as you move up in the price bracket. A 15,000 rupee smartphone will provide a different user experience than a 25,000 rupee smartphone. And the difference, while not that big of a deal in terms of the actual user interface since they're both running Android, the actual experience, it's much better. Take my own two phones, my old Poco M2 Pro and my new Poco F4. The 2GB difference in RAM, the 6GB RAM in my Poco M2 Pro and the 8GB RAM in my Poco F4 are a 2GB difference in their RAM capacities, but that added with the improved storage hardware improves the experience massively. And that's just the memory and storage. The display is better, the processor is better, the cameras are better. So the more you pay, the better the components, the better the hardware. And as a result, the better the software will work on better hardware. The high-end Android phones often compete directly with Apple products, but budget models may not offer the same performance or polish. And this is something that occurs where a lot of the people in India tend to use budget Android devices when they are unable to buy something of a higher price because of their own budget restrictions. And I understand that. I do the same thing on a regular basis. Everybody around me does that. But the problem is we tend to judge the higher end Android devices by the experience of the lower end. You're not going to judge an XUV 700 by Mahindra based on the tractors made by Mahindra, right? Funnily enough, older iPhones and lower end iPhones such as the SE variants will perform like their budget Android counterparts. However, the Apple advantage of those chosen hardware and software is still pretty evident. And this conversation still applies to Windows and Mac. So Windows devices are a large spectrum of various price brackets. So you can buy a Lenovo, whatever the hell laptop and go up in price to a Lenovo whatever the hell but expensive laptop. Same for Acer. I have a Predator Triton 300, but I could also go ahead and buy an Acer Swift or something like that, and the difference in experience is gonna change. This is a 90,000 rupee laptop, but if you go higher in price or lower in price, the experience will change, and that is something that people tend to ignore in their judgment of these devices. As a result of this hardware divide, many features tend to just suck on a lower end phone. Take Nearby Share for example. Nearby Share is a wireless file sharing utility built into all Android devices like AirDrop on iPhones. Now, Nearby Share between two Androids works by using either cellular data, Wi-Fi, or just the mobile hotspot. As you might have guessed, the performance of these features depends on the quality of the hardware used. Because if you want better cellular data transfer speeds or better Wi-Fi transfer speeds or just a better mobile hotspot transfer speed, you want a good modem that is in your device. And if the modem needs to be better, that means that the manufacturer has to put in that much amount of money, and that amount of money will obviously translate to you as a customer. So you will have to pay that small amount of money more compared to the previous one that you were thinking of, because you want that much better performance in a particular aspect. An older or cheaper device just won't be able to send or receive files as fast as the newer or more expensive counterparts. The same could be said for the speed of data transfer. If you're downloading a large file, the speed of the download is not only linked to the Wi-Fi and data module in your smartphone, but also to the kind of storage you're using. If you're using an older standard storage, like in my Poco M2 Pro, then you're gonna get slower download speeds, because the read and write speeds, the speed at which a particular device or a particular form of storage will allow you to paste onto the device or read from the device. Since that's slower, then obviously the download speed, which will be writing on the storage, will become slower. And that is better on my Poco F4, because now I have the UFS 3.1 storage, and that means it's just that much faster. Meaning that my download speeds, even though I have a great Wi-Fi speed and I have a great module, would not have been the same on my Poco M2 Pro as compared to the new Poco F4. Once again, this also applies to Windows versus Mac devices. In the end, it's not that Apple products are inherently better than Android products. They're just different. Apple's integrated approach gives them control over their entire ecosystem, and that also becomes a bit restrictive if you want to experiment with other stuff. But Android's flexibility allows for that, allows for a wider range of devices and price points. Since this variety means that every particular device, individual device, has their own pros and cons and advantages and disadvantages, and what works best for you depends on your needs, your budget, and your preferences. It's a matter of what you are actually going for. So the next time you're weighing up the Apple versus Android debate, remember, it's not about which one is better, it's about which one is better for you.